My name is Christian Beebe, and my topic is over the fishing culture of different French-speaking countries. During this project, I got to talk to two amazing people from West Africa and one amazing person from Quebec, Canada. Now, I think it's important to begin with the culture of our home country, the United States, before we begin talking about anybody else. Though we live here and have many different ways to get into fishing, it still remains an activity that if your family or someone you know isn't into fishing, you don't really have a way or a reason to begin the journey yourself. Here in the United States, we treat fishing as more than just a fun activity. It's a competitive sport that people make money off of and go around the country competing in different competitions for their cash rewards or the prizes at the end. Here, we are blessed enough to have many small family-owned shops and big retail stores where we can buy pretty much any type of fishing equipment that you need. And our laws are pretty lenient on the different ways that we can fish. So we can use poles, nets, spears, bows, and we can fish in many different ways, such as ice fishing, going out on a boat, or even fly fishing a river. Our culture runs deep, and every person has their own way of fishing here in the United States. And one of the best parts about fishing here is the community we've built around it. One of my favorite parts about fishing is going out and meeting new people and finding out what they used to fish with or what they have caught in that area. Now moving on, Yakuba Dia. He is a French-speaking person from the Ivory Coast, located in West Africa. He works as a French tutor, teaching young kids how to speak French, and he was the first individual that I was able to speak with during this project. So it was very difficult to get over the initial broken English he was speaking. But after we got over that hurdle, our conversation started to sail. The laws of fishing in the Ivory Coast. The first thing that I learned, which was different from here in the United States, is that law enforcement is much laxer when it comes to who has a fishing license and is allowed to fish. The only people who the government targets are commercial fishers or people selling at the market. So people who are just fishing for fun or out with buddies are not normally targeted by the law enforcement there. This was interesting to hear because here in the United States, if you don't have a license, you're stopped almost every other time you're out fishing by a DNR officer, and you can get into major trouble for that with a fine and also have the loss of your license for over a year in the most severe of cases. How do these people fish? Then, after that, I was able to learn that they don't have places to buy fishing equipment from. So places like a family-owned shops here in the U.S. or the bigger companies like Bass Pro, Cabela's. So most of the equipment that they use has been passed down, or if your family doesn't own a rod or a spear, you have to go out and make your own if you want to fish. All in all, the most common tools they use are handmade or bought fishing nets. They use these by dragging them across the bottom of the ocean to capture fish while riding in their handmade family canoes or boats that they have bought themselves or inherited from family or friends. The fish that they catch. While fishing, they do drag a lot of varieties of fish back onto the boat, but after talking with Yakuba, he said the most sought after and common fish that people aim for are the tuna and gustava, to eat and sell at the fish markets in Toga, with them being a majority of the fish you will see when visiting the market. Now, going over their fishing culture. People from the Ivory Coast don't have a lot of fun practices that I was able to find when it comes to their fishing culture. Most people only fish for a profit there and treat it just as a job. So there's no competitions or practices, and it's very rare to see people just out fishing for fun. Moving on are the cuisines that they enjoy eating. Talking with Yakuba, I was able to learn that his favorite dishes and some that he sees a lot of people eating when he goes out. His favorite dish was tchep au poisson, which is a rice with corn, potatoes, and other vegetables topped with a fish and then sprayed with a special type of sauce. Then another popular dish he said was just straight tuna added onto crab on rice topped with sauce claire and butter. Yakuba being the first person I talked to with was difficult because of the language gap, but by the end of our conversation, he helped me a lot getting used to using talk abroad and speaking to other people from different French-speaking countries. And this is where the Ivory Coast is located on the map. You can see it's located in the bottom left west part of the Africa. Now, moving on, we have Sylvain Boterhoun. Sylvain Boterhoun is a teacher as a medical representative in Togo in West Africa. He was the second person I was able to talk to. With the first one out of the way, it was a lot easier to speak and understand what he was saying. He was very interesting to be able to talk to, and had a lot of knowledge about fishing for his region. So we were able to carry the conversation on without stopping. He has never been fishing before, but he has many friends who have been trying to get him to go with them whenever they go out. Now, for the laws of fishing in Togo. The laws of fishing are very similar as they were in the Ivory Coast, being that you do need a license, but if you're only fishing to have fun or just be out with your friends, you won't be targeted by the law enforcement there. Rather, they only target the people commercial fishing or selling at the market. How do these people fish? People in Togo fish using boats that they use many different tools to be able to catch fish with. They use rods and reels just like here in the US, but they also use nets like people from the Ivory Coast, and they use balloons. Before this, I have never heard about this way of fishing, so I asked him, and what they do is they attach live bait to a hook and a sinker, and they have these giant rubber balloons that they throw into the water and tie to the boat, and use them as giant bobbers. And then, as a fish takes the bait, they'll be able to see it from where they're sitting and go out to retrieve their catch, which was very interesting to hear about. Now, moving on to the fish that they catch. They catch mostly tilapia, sardines, anchovies, catfish, carp, and crustaceans like shrimp and crab are the most normally caught and sold in the markets. I find it interesting that there were freshwater fish included in that roster, because from what I've seen before, Africa is where they fish is primarily ocean water. Moving on to their fishing culture. Out of all the cultures, I found that the people of Togo have been the most interesting to learn about. They have many different cultural practices I have never even heard about before. Starting off, the only people that fish in Togo are people who do it to make a living by selling it to the markets. Now, these people on the boat have a rule that is until they catch a fish, no one is allowed to talk after they set sail. Then, after they catch a fish, they have stoves on their boats, which they use to cook and try to bless the rest of their fishing trip with by eating that fish. Even with this, sometimes the fisheries puts a hold on fishing throughout the year to try and recoup the fish population, so people in Togo sometimes buy fish from Kenya so that they can meet the demand of the masses. Moving on to their preferred cuisines. Sylvain's favorite cuisine to eat was cod over rice, doused in butter, but besides that he's seen many people eating more crustaceans like lobsters and crab in Togo. Now we can look that Togo is also almost right next to the Ivory Coast, located in the West Africa region. Who is Donovan? Donovan is from Quebec, Canada, and works as a French professor there. He was very easy to talk to and had the best English out of the three people I spoke with, so that made our conversations flow better. Donovan grew up fishing with his grandparents and uncles, but ultimately dropped the sport as he got into adulthood because he didn't have the time, nor did he have anyone to go with. He does talk abroad as a side job, not only to make slightly more money, but also to make sure he can keep up to date on his language skills so he can better teach his students at his university. Moving on to the laws of Quebec. Quebec is very weird with how their licenses work, but they are the most similar to here in the United States. They have conservation officers whose job is to make sure that everyone is following the laws and regulations while fishing. The licenses themselves are also weird because you can buy a license to fish and release, or a more expensive one, which is a license where you can keep the fish as well, which is similar to what we have here in the United States. Also, the license extends to who you're fishing with, so if two people go out and fish for a walleye where the bag limit is 6 a day, both people can use that one singular license and keep up to 6 walleye between the two of them. Moving on to how these people fish. In Quebec, they are very similar to us in the United States because they also have access to big fishing stores as well as other smaller family-owned stores. The biggest difference between us is that they have more of an impact on ice fishing because of how quickly and how long it freezes over it as the temperature starts to drop in Quebec. Moving on to the fish that they catch. The fish they catch are pretty much the same as here in Michigan, but with one exception. Because of their lakes, the pike, walleye, and the muskies go to a much larger size than you would normally find here. This makes Quebec a very popular fishing area for fishermen looking for a challenge during the cold winter months. Moving on to their fishing culture. Just like here, Quebec people host fishing tournaments to see who can catch the bigger fish, which normally ends with prizes and a big cash payout at the end. Other than that, their culture is the same here, same as it is in the US here. Finally, the cuisines that they enjoy. They enjoy smoked fish and fish made over a campfire when camping as their main food. Other than that, they also include smoked cod, smoked salmon, and pretty much any other smoked fish that there is. Now, bringing it all together for a conclusion. Talk Abroad was a fun activity which was a good refresher from the norms of college life. Though it was hard sometimes adjusting to the language barrier, I believe everything I learned from this will carry with me for a very long time. And these are the citations I have used for all of my information to double check everything I learned from my partners.